Hi, I'm Kylie Roberts.
And I'm Mel Wunwell, and we are Shift Unlimited.
We are both qualified executive coaches, coach supervisors, and trainers of NLP and coaching. The world is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous place. Every day we wake up to a new surprise. Uncertainty is chronic, instability is permanent, and disruption is common. This is the new normal. The game has changed. It's time to rip up the old rulebook. It's time to define success differently. A shift is happening. The shift is unlimited. We need leaders to live more purposeful lives and to lead more impactful businesses. In this podcast series, we will be doing a deeper dive into many facets of living and leading in this modern world, from founder to scale up, right through to leaders of global established organizations.
We will explore how we can be more holistic and authentic as we connect more deeply with ourselves, our relationships with others, and the wider world. In this podcast series, we'll engage in conversation together on topics that support the modern leader.
We have one wild, precious life to make change for good, and whilst change is daunting, so is staying the same. Let's begin. Hello, everybody. In this episode, we will share a model to help you direct any leadership or coaching conversation. It's a model that will help you when you're feeling stuck in any conversation. If you're feeling stuck in the weeds or finding discord and disagreement, this will give you a way out. If you're frustrated that you aren't getting to the details that you need for either discovery or implementation, then this will help you where to focus and where it's going to be most productive. We call this model the chunking up and down model, and it's really as simple as it sounds if you let it be. Whenever we take any idea or concept, we can map it in two directions, either by going more and more abstract or more detail. And we can think about what is needed to get the results that are desired. Does the conversation need to be more abstract, or does it need to be more detailed? And from there, we can ask questions to move the person's internal representation according to where the greatest results can be found.
So let's take a look at this. Chunking up to abstraction. So why would we want to chunk up to abstraction? Have you ever been so stuck in a conversation that you cannot find any consensus or agreement? One of our first mentors shared something with us that has stayed with us and been valuable several times in our lives. Stuck equals no choice. When we are stuck in any decision or in a conversation with another, we are often too far down in the detail for it to be productive. Chunking up to abstraction is great because it's a great way of becoming unstuck. You can use the questions here to get out of the detail and unstuck at any time. They are: for what purpose? What is your intention? What does that do for you? And what is that an example of? Asking these chunking up questions lifts the conversation as well as the thinking of those involved up out of the detail into something more abstract. Here in the abstract space, there is much more room for agreement and consensus, as well as providing the higher purpose for when you're ready to go back down into the detail again.
When you've established the intention and purpose, you can then chunk down to the details using the meta model questions. We will come back to the meta model in a future episode. The chunking down meta model questions are: what specifically, how specifically, where specifically, who specifically, when specifically. These chunking down questions provide plenty of opportunities to dive into the details and gain clarity on the specifics of a situation. When they're used deliberately and artfully, you can use this model to chunk up to abstraction and intention and chunk down into details and specifics. Shall we give an example to bring it to life a little more for you? A client that I was coaching was feeling indecisive about the opportunity to stay where they were in their career or to move on. Indecision is a symptom of being stuck, no options. To help them break free from the stuckness, I asked them the chunking up questions. What will a career move do for you? What is the intention of a career move? What is this an example of? The client moved from being stuck in the detail to identifying that a career move would be for the purpose of escaping a colleague that they were not getting along with. This was an example of their defense patterns of withdrawal and avoidance. So when the going gets tough, they withdraw and they avoid. Once we'd arrived at this place in our coaching conversation, we could then chunk down into the detail and specifics of what was causing them the most pain. Who specifically? When specifically? What specifically was happening? How specifically was our client behaving? Being in the specifics gave the client an opportunity to see the situation for what it is and also for their role that they're playing in the dynamic. So instead of being stuck on whether to take a career move, we addressed the underlying challenges directly.
You can use chunking up and down in most conversations. In our experience, it's one of the best ways to direct attention to achieve the desired results. In a project update meeting, once the purpose is established, chunking down into the specifics will be a productive way to spend the time. In an innovation meeting, chunking up to abstraction will produce more creativity than being down in the specifics. Before we finish this episode, we'd like to briefly introduce one addition to the chunking up and chunking down model. This is the chunking sideways, or going lateral, as we call it. Going lateral can be a great way of bringing two opposing ideas or people who are opposing each other into the same space. So going lateral is simply asking the question, what's another example of this? Note that this is a quite similar question, yet very different in intention to the chunking up question, what is this an example of? What is another example of this takes what the person has just said and moves them laterally, not up or down, to think of other ideas that are similar. It's best to go lateral only once you've chunked up at least 3 times, so that you can go lateral on the abstract rather than on the specifics. For instance, if you take the conversation with our client about the career move, after chunking up a few times to establish that the intention is to escape or withdraw from someone that's causing them upset, we can go lateral and ask the client, what's another example of you withdrawing from difficult conversations? This opens up a different arm to the conversation that gives the client greater clarity on their coping mechanisms and when they show up. Again, you can also go lateral in innovation and brainstorming to get even more ideas on the table. The rule of thumb is to remember to chunk up at least 3 times before going lateral, though.
You can use chunking up and chunking down in negotiation. We'd like to share how powerful the chunking up and down model of questions can be used as a part of a negotiation strategy. From time to time, when you're communicating with someone, you will want to disagree and do it elegantly rather than doing more harm than good. And you can do this using the agreement frame and the steps in the negotiation model. We've got an image for this. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see that. Let's start with the agreement frame. Here you simply replace the word but with the word and. This enables you to disagree and or challenge while still remaining in rapport. The word in our vocabulary most likely to break rapport is that little and definitely overused word but. This is because when we use but, we negate everything that we said before. If instead we were to say, I agree and, rather than I agree but, we can maintain rapport and also put forward an alternative view. Good ways of doing this are by using some of the following phrases. Yes, and. I appreciate your thinking, and. I agree, and. I respect your thinking, and. We invite you to experiment with the above using and instead of but. If you do use but, notice the difference in response that you receive.
Often, when two or more parties do have a disagreement or are in disagreement, it's in the details and the specifics. So NLP has an excellent model for negotiation and mediation, and the steps are as follows. Make sure, one, that you're in rapport. Make sure you and the other party are in rapport before embarking on a negotiation or a mediation. That's the first one. We've already talked about rapport in a previous episode. Use the agreement frame we just shared, the and rather than the but. Number 3, chunk up until both parties are in agreement as to why they are here and the outcome they would like to achieve. 4, chunk down only as quickly as you can maintain agreement. 5, if you lose agreement, backtrack to the last agreement point and begin chunking down using a different path, going laterally as needed. Keep chunking down, number 6, until you reach a level where joint agreed action is possible. So you can use the chunking up and chunking down model to chunk the parties up to intention and purpose, and then take them both lateral until they can find something that they can agree on. From there, you can chunk down into the details. And it's good to remember that you need to chunk up if you get into disagreements. We would love for you to really get the experimenting with these models and practices in all areas of your life and leadership. It's really very simple to apply, and in our experience, a hugely valuable tool for business relationships. So thank you for listening today. Please do click to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram at shift_unlimited.